the Danish agreement with the Americans made headlines for 2 or 3 days. Nobody talks about it today. Now, there has been some basic provisions for Denmark's NATO membership since 1949. One of them was no foreign troops on Danish territory, no foreign pre-positioned weapons, no nuclear weapons, and no cooperation with NATO's nuclear planning group. These were, if you will, footnotes to the membership of the Danes. They didn't want to be involved that way. Suddenly, we are told in 2022 that there has been negotiations with the United States for quite a long time, and it has been decided that there will be a defense agreement, which was the one which was now published. It's a total break, both for Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, that the Americans will now have bases there. There have been different provisions for neutrality or whatever, that we would not have foreign troops in these countries with their weapons, etc. And the agreement is signed before it's been passed by the Danish parliament. Meaning you will hardly see any kind of no to that. But added to that is that the first 10 years cannot be changed. Denmark cannot withdraw from it. No, the US cannot withdraw from it. We cannot change it. The first 10 years, it's fixed. Now, nobody knows what is happening the next 10 years. So this is grossly irresponsible, a violation of the sovereign decision-making and sovereign territory of the Danes. And finally, the American troops who will be in Denmark at 3 bases, in the western part called Jutland, will be working under American jurisdiction. That means if they do something criminal on Danish territory, or they're in a pub and there's something happening, etc., they are taken for legal procedure in the US, not in Denmark, where it happened. And that's the reason the government doesn't publicize these things, because, they gave a press conference the day after Mr. Blinken had said that there would be an agreement signed. But there's been no public discussion about these things. It's a total violation of democratic decision-making too. The only argument you hear is that this is done in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And if Russia can do that in Ukraine, it could do the same anywhere else. I've heard that since I was born in 1951, that the Russians are coming. If the Russians haven't come for more than 70 years, they probably don't come tomorrow either. Imagine you have 40 new American bases in what we used to call Scandinavia, or the Nordic area, which used to be one of the most peaceful and balanced and low tension areas in the world. And that has, of course, to do with the Arctic too, and the resources in the Arctic too. But the official argument is, look what the Russians did in Ukraine. And then people who don't know a damn thing about security will say, oh, yeah, my God, maybe Russia will invade us tomorrow too. It's good we have America coming helping us. It is at that very low intellectual level we are operating. And that is dangerous in such an important field as security, politics, and peace. Well, what you will see is that if you have a closer and closer cooperation also now with troops and pre-positioning of American material and jurisdiction and all that, you are also going to be more likely to be dragged into American warfare somewhere else. This is a change that has happened in Denmark over the last good 20 years, because Denmark participated for the first time in international bombings outside its territory, the first time since 1945, when it bombed in Belgrade during NATO's intervention and bombings of Kosovo and Serbia. And since then, it has been a very active bomber nation. It was an occupying power for 4 years in Iraq. It has been in and out bombing Syria. It has been a major bomber and destroyer in Libya, also because the former Danish prime minister, who were responsible for the co-occupation of Iraq for 4 years by Denmark, became the Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Anders Fogh Rasmussen, since I began as a grown-up and as a student and scholar to follow security politics. And I've seen the successive step-by-step militarization of the thinking, of research, of politics, and of the media in Denmark. You cannot get through today with alternative views about, let's say, the American military agreement with Denmark. You don't want debate about these things because they know, of course, that they are selling out Danish sovereignty to the Americans. And that's a thing we didn't get into, and that's why this reduces the security of the Danish people. One, when you put bases up in all over Scandinavia, and it's close to 40 bases in a short time that the Americans have gotten in Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, you reduce the time there is for a reaction in a crisis situation. Secondly, when you have American troops and possibly nuclear weapons, you will be the first targets by Russians. To be first, or preemptively, or in response, your country will be surely bombed earlier than it would if you did not have bases. This is a fundamental issue. It has to do with the most important decision a politician can make, whether or not to go to war. And here we will be dragged, the countries in the Nordic area will be dragged into a crisis. These government leaders are more loyal with the interests of Washington